In this video, I will be showing how to animate the Max for Maya character to jump into the air. So simply to crouch down and then jump into the air. So Max for Maya can be gotten from the internet. You can just Google Max for Maya download and you'll find it in a number of places. And it's been around for a while. It's a fairly old model. So when you download it, it will open up like this in what's called a T-pose, and it has controllers to control each part of the body here, clicking on these controllers. And there's different kinds of controllers, different sets of controllers that one can use to animate this body. And what I want to do for the arms is I want to use the inverse kinematic set of controllers. And so I'm going to activate that by clicking on the big square ring or box around the waist, which has a number of extra channels here in the channel box. And those channels include the inverse kinematics for the arms and the legs. So the legs are already set the way I want them, and I'm going to set the arms. I'm going to turn these zeros on the arms to ones, and you'll see that it changes the controller set. Now I've got these wrist controllers instead, and that's what I want to use for this particular thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pose Max for Maya in a position by using my move tool and my rotate, in a position that appears to be more natural. So I'll make the arms kind of hanging down here at the side. I'm going to rotate the hands to kind of hang. And then these fingers, which are stick straight, don't look particularly natural. These are the finger controllers right here, these little rings. I can grab all of the fingers at once except for the thumb, and with the rotate tool, I could just curl them all a little bit, like that. I could even curl the thumb down a little bit if I want. I'll do the same thing with this side. Kind of curl them a little. And the thumb controller, a little bit. Bring it in. That's a little bit more natural. Maybe I'll take this hand now a little away from the body. Up a little bit of bend in the arm. All right, that's a pretty good start. Gotta make them look pretty natural. I'll drop these hands back just a little bit. Maybe down a little. Kind of want to make them look loose and alive. Okay, so what I want to do is animate them from here. Now, if I'm going to animate any one of these controllers, all these controllers have their own keyframes in the timeline. So I know I want to animate that hand with that wrist controller. So I'm going to have my auto key turned on right here in the corner. And then I'm going to just use the S to put a keyframe on all these channels here in the channel box. I'm just going to hit the S key, and that just keys them all. It's really too much, but it'll work great. And I'll do it to the other hand as well. You can see that it's putting a strike in the timeline. And I'll click on this hand, do the same thing, hit S. And I know that I'm going to want to move the waist, because the waist goes up and down like this. And you notice that the hands and feet stay put when I move the waist up and down. And that's the inverse kinematics. So I want to key that because he has to crouch down and rotate and all that. And then I want to key the rings around each feet, because the feet are what is going to make it so that he can leap off the ground. Okay, so I'm going to key this foot and the other foot at frame 1 by hitting S. I'm probably going to move his head around, and that's controlled by the big ring around the head. So I'll hit S for that. And I think that's it. Did I do the waist? Yes. So I've got the waist, the big square one on the waist. I've got the two hands, the rings around the feet, and the head. And that's all I'm going to key. So it's going to start at frame 1 like this. Now, if he's going to crouch down, then I want to give him a little bit of anticipation. And anticipation means that I do the opposite action. I'm going to make him go up a little bit and then crouch down. The anticipation is to draw your viewer's eye to the model so that, since we track motion with our eyes, we'll know that the model is about to do something. All right, so I'm going to go, let's say, 5 frames out in the timeline, and I'm going to make him rise just a little bit. And perhaps I might even move the hands a little bit as well, just to kind of make everything kind of rise up just a little. Because he's about to crouch down. So I'm going to make him first rise between 1 and 5, just a little tiny bit. That's your anticipation. And then I figure it's going to take him about 8 frames to get into a crouch. So I'll go about to frame 13 perhaps, and I will start crouching him down. So I'm going to grab his waist controller, crouch him down. You see the hands kind of get messed up. I think I'll have to take those hands down as well too, because they might get so messed up I won't be able to fix them. So right now I'm going to stretch them down so that they're kind of ready to go for this. And now I'm going to crouch. There we go. I'm going to crouch him down, and I'm going to lean him forward. And I think I'm going to change the center of gravity on the body around the waist, because I want to make it look like there's enough weight on the right side to equalize the weight on the left side of him. Otherwise, he's going to fall over. So when we crouch, we tend to try to center ourselves. We try to distribute our weight so that we don't fall over. All right, that looks pretty good. Let's make the arms go back. This is all happening here at frame 13. Make the hands go in the right spot. Something like this. And I'll do the same thing with the other arm. Make it kind of go back a bit. And I'm going to rotate it. Keep it a little bit bent just to kind of keep some fluidity there. And maybe I'm going to make him look down a little bit. Right now he's looking forward. I think I'm going to turn his head to be looking at the floor, so he kind of knows where the floor is. All right, so let's see how that looks so far. So he goes, did I lose my anticipation? Looks like I might have lost my anticipation. Let's see what's going on here. Looks like I lost it at frame 5, so I think it's because I did a rotate on that waist. And I also didn't key the head to start at frame 5. So that should pull it back. So there's the anticipation, and then he crouches down. Okay, anticipation, crouch down. And now I want him to jump off the ground. So I figure that's going to take about 8, maybe 9 frames. So if I'm going to say 9, maybe I'll go with 9 frames. I'm going to go out to frame 22. And I need to bring his body straight. And I think I'll make him go a little forward. And I'm going to straighten up his head. I can make him look up a little bit. And let me see where his feet are going to leave the ground. Right now, his feet are planted on the ground only at frame 1. And I want him to start rising. Let's go back to the crouch position. I want him to the feet to start rising from the ground at frame 13, but I only have them keyed right now at frame 1. So I really need to key them at frame 13 so that when it rises from the ground, it won't just start floating up in the air from frame 1. So I'm going to hit S at frame 13 for the feet before I make them leave the ground. That's each foot. Okay, so they're going to stay planted on the ground until he rises up. And the rise up here is at 22. So let's make him go up. I'm going to make the body go up, and it's going to stretch out the legs and arms for a moment. I'll make the feet catch up with the body. And I may have to make them catch up a little bit later so it doesn't look like they rise off the ground, that they need to be pulled up by the body. And also what's going to happen is that the toes are going to stay pointed at the ground. When you leave the ground, the toes tend to point to the ground when we leave it like this. And you could jump up in the air yourself and kind of look at your body and see what happens here. And now I need to have the hands catch up. Let's do the first one here. And I think I'm going to make it so that it swings forward. I'll rotate it. Same thing with the other hand. Make it go up and forward. A little bit too much. And rotate it. Arm's a little bit more bent here than I want it to be. It's not bad. I'm gonna maybe put a little arch in his back, and I'm going to do that. Let's see how it looks first of all. He crouches down and then leaps. Now, see, it looks like his feet are floating up, see? So what I think I want to do is I want to make his feet stay down a little bit longer. So I'm going to take that keyframe of his feet, and I'm going to move that keyframe. So this is where it stays planted to the ground. So I want it to stay planted on the ground like 3 or 4 frames more, so it doesn't look like they float up. It looks like they're pulled up by the rising body. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift, the 2 keys in the corner, click the key of where his feet are planted on the ground, and move it a few frames down the road to about 16. I'll do that to the other one too. Click on the frame, hit Control-Shift, and move it down to 16. Okay, so now his feet stay planted all the way to 16 and then start rising into the air. So now the body rises first, and then the feet follow. And I'll hit play now. All right, not bad. I might want to give a little arch to his back. Make him look more elegant, I guess. And I'll do this with his round waist controller. But see, it has never been keyed. There's no key. So I better decide where it's going to start arching. So maybe around 19, 20 maybe 20. I'll hit S. And then when he's up there in the air, I'll move it forward like this and give his back a little arch. Maybe I'll start it a little sooner by moving that key. He's kind of pumping out his stomach a little bit more than I want. A little less of an arch. That looks pretty good. All right, so he's jumped in the air. And now I want him to land. Now when he lands, he has to land at the same spot or the same height. And he then has to shock absorb. He has to land and bend his knees to shock absorb the body coming down. So where do I want him to land? I'm going to say 8 frames later. So I'm at frame 24. That's where the zenith, or it looks like it's 22 rather. I'm just looking at the waist. The zenith, the highest point is frame 22. And so I'm going to go 8 frames later to frame 30 and land them. So the first thing I'm going to do is get these feet to go to the same spot as when they left the ground at frame 30. And the way I'm going to do this is by copying and pasting the position of these foot controllers. So frame 1 is when they were on the ground, see? So I'm going to copy by right-clicking on the frame and hitting copy. You can't do it by Control-C or anything. It has to be by right-clicking on the frame. I'm going to hit copy and then paste it at frame 30 by going paste, paste, and that will stretch them down to where the original position was. And then same thing with the other foot. Copy and paste it at frame 30. Paste, paste. Okay, so now I know it's going to land at the very same level and position as when he left the ground. Now let's bring the waist down. And get a little bit of crouch. Maybe not down so much. Maybe he doesn't have to get that much shock absorption going on. Just maybe that much. And let's get these hands in something more sane of a position. So let's say the hands are going to swing back now. They're going to go back, then forward, then back. So I'm going to swing them back. Maybe something like that. Do the same thing with the other arm. Where is that controller? There it is. Sometimes the controllers, if you twist the body around too much, the controllers will end up kind of hiding inside the body, and then they're hard to find. You have to kind of try to get them into a more neutral position to find them again. And I think I'll drop his head. Maybe a little bit more forward. Okay, so he lands and absorbs the shock. Okay, highest point and lands. And maybe I'll make that belly not stick out so much now. Then I'll go back to kind of a more of a back position. Okay, so he goes up and down. I think I'm going to crouch him down a little bit more. Oops, that's the wrong controller. Just to make it look like he's a little bit heavier. And I'll have to move the arms down a little too. think I'm going to rotate him a little bit as well. A little bit more forward. Should I make it look like he's having to absorb some shock? Down, up, down. All right, that's good. Now he's going to have to try to come back to straight, and then his arms are going to have to swing a little bit to try to come to a calm standstill. So I'm going to say about maybe 6 frames later, he comes back up to about the right height. So I'll have him come up, straighten up a little bit, head looking more forward now. He's trying to come back to normal. Taking the hands, swinging them forward, because hands are going to go forward and back, and then try to come to normal. But we're going to swing his hands less and less and less until they come to still. So not too much this time. Rotate it. There we go. See what that looks like. And he comes up. Okay. And then another maybe 6, 7 frames. I'll go 7 this time. I'm going to make him, I'm going to say he overshoots. He went up a little bit too high, because overshoot is always good. And he kind of then settles just a tiny bit. And then let's have his arms go back. Not so much this time, though, because remember, his arms have to swing less and less and less until they come to still. So just not so much there coming back. Very slight bend. I never like to go to completely straight. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, and he comes up and down, and he kind of swings back a little bit. Might be going too far back. Yeah, it's a little bit far. And make his arms come forward just slightly. This is where the artistry comes in, where you have to kind of look at it and decide, is that quite right? I don't know. Let's do a little adjusting. Looks like his waist kind of tipped over a little bit. Straighten him up just a little bit. Not sure where that happened. Hands got to come away from the body slightly. Okay. And now about 5 frames or so later, I'll make his arms go forward, because I want these frames to be closer and closer together, because he's going to swing. It's going to take him a shorter and shorter period of time to do the arm swings. As they swing less and less, they won't take so long either. So I want the frames, it's kind of like when a bouncing ball comes to rest. It bounces shorter and shorter time and less height as it comes to rest. A little bit of bend, a little bit of rotations, keep his hand looking straight. That's pretty good. A little bit of bend. Okay, swing back, forward. Let's go back again a little bit. A little shorter again. Kind of straighter. We tend to make our arms pretty straight when we go back with them, because our arms can only, they can't bend backward. So they will generally just kind of go to straight or pretty straight. And then when they swing forward, they can bend. And so they bend forward and then they straighten when they go back. They would bend back and forward if it could bend both directions. We just can't. Okay, so we go back, forward, back. Okay, a little bit forward now, even less. Just barely this time. Again, keep the rotation. See how the hand looks. The hand looks a little odd. Arms look a little bit too straight for me. Just going to give them a little bit of tiny bend. I'm concerned about stretching them. That's why I never really like to go to perfectly straight. I don't want them to be stretched. That one's a little bit bent. That's good. Okay, forward, back, forward. And then maybe the last one here, I'm just going to have it come to like rest. May not be enough swings. Maybe it needs like one or two more swings, but let's see how this works. Because the more swings you do, to a point, the looser and more alive he's going to look. I can always put lots of little details, like, for example, I could make his head sort of in the middle of all this, go to another position just to kind of keep him alive. Maybe he looks a little bit somewhere to one side. And while his arms are swinging, maybe he kind of looks again, another position, just to kind of keep him alive. These little details is what keep your model alive. So let's see what the whole thing looks like when I hit play. His arms swing a little too fast. Yeah, they're a little too fast. So if I want to fix that, here's all my arm swings. They're all too fast. Maybe a quick way to fix it is I could select, see, where does the first swing start? Right here. Is that too fast? Let's see if that first one's too fast. No, the first one looks okay. So really just all of these need to have more frames is really what has to happen. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these by hitting Control Shift and selecting all of these and move them all out. Select all but the last and move that out. And then select the last two, move those out, and then select the last one and move that out. Let's see if that one arm, we're just going to pay attention to the one arm and try to ignore the other arm. Let's see if we like it better. Yeah, I like that better. So now I'm just going to match it with the other arm by just looking back and forth. So let's see what my frames are here. I've got 51 and 58. So let's do that with the other arm, 51 and 58. 51 and 58. What about the next ones? 51, 58. I've got 65 and 72. So 65 on the other arm and 72. Let's see if they're synchronized now. Yeah, that's a little better. Could still be worked on a little bit, but you know, it's looking fairly loose. He can even do a little bit more swinging. So the only other thing we need to do now is that when he jumps up into the air and he's at the zenith point right there, first of all, I may want to make him jump a little bit further up too. He doesn't really get much off the ground. So I can raise him up. I'm just go to that keyframe where the zenith point is. Give him a little more height. And the feet as well. Okay, well that's on frame 22. Let's see if he looks a little bit more realistic now when he jumps. That's a little better. So the only thing that happens now is that he jumps up and immediately comes down. But in fact, when we jump up into the air, our velocity is going to go slower and slower and slower until we kind of hang in the air a little bit, just like a ball bouncing up in the air. And then slowly it's going to change direction and come back down. So we need to flatten the curve so that he kind of hangs in the air just a little bit. And that's all at frame 22. So the only curves we really need to flatten out so that he stays up there is the waist and the feet, because that's what controls when he leaves the ground. So I'm going to go under Windows Animation Editor's Graph Editor. And you can see that his waist here has all kinds of lines, which is all the tracks for the rotate. Here's rotate, here's another rotate, here's a translate, here's another translate. The only thing I'm concerned about is translate Y, because that's his height. Just like a tree growing out of the grid, out of the ground, that's Y going upward. So that's the only thing I want to see here. I just want to click on the translate Y, and that's going to show me what happens there. And what I want to do is flatten this curve up here. I don't want to do anything to the bottom because he has to kind of get going too. I don't want to sharpen anything on the bottom. It's not like he hit the ground and then bounced up. He slowly gains some speed at the bottom, and he will kind of slow down when he starts to when he impacts the bottom. But the top, he really has to hang out there for a while, or else it's going to look like he doesn't have any mass. Doesn't have any momentum to change direction, over time. So it's this keyframe right here. So what I want to do is I'm going to go under curves for that keyframe, and this is not very intuitive. I'm going to click weighted tangents. So it's curves, weighted tangents, and that gives me the ability to just stretch this out and let him hang in the air a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing with the 2-foot controllers. I just want to see the translate Y. And just that one key, I'm going to say curves, weighted tangents, and give it a little stretch to give it some flattening. And then try and do the same thing with the other foot. Translate Y only. Click only on that one key. Curves, weighted tangents to the very bottom, and flatten it out a little bit, and hopefully I've done the right shape on the flattening. Let's see what it looks like. Not bad. Kind of hangs in the air just a little bit now. Could even flatten it just a little tiny bit more if I wanted. Especially the waist. Maybe I'm just going to try it with the waist and see if that's enough. So this is under Windows, Animation Editor's Graph. I'm just going to really just pick up that waist one. Here it is right here. Just give it a little more stretch. Maybe I'll do a foot or two at the same time since I'm here. A little bit more. I don't want it to look like he's hovering in the air. So if I do it too much, that's what it's going to look like. I don't want that. All right, let's hope that worked. I like that better. Okay, that's about it. So he crouches down, he anticipates first, rather. Anticipates, crouches down, jumps up into the air, shock absorption, and then comes to rest. And all this happens in about 75 frames. So that's it.